Welcome to the Fearless Family Health Podcast. In a world that is filled with fear, my hope is to bring you inspiration, information, and support to live joyfully and more healthfully. Join me as each week I will bring you empowering tips as well as interviews with parents, doctors, and experts to bring you vital information to make you the master of your family's future. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fearless Family Health. So it's the new year, and everybody is thinking about ways to improve themselves, to improve their health, maybe their financial health, their family health, their relationships. So today I actually have with me someone who is going to come here and chat with us about self-care. And I know that's kind of a buzzword right now. Everyone is talking about it. But I wanted to give you some tips on how you can incorporate this into your life without a huge budget or without a huge amount of time. Because I know that for many of us, we are already really busy, and adding something new to our life can just add more stress and more chaos instead of less. And we are often on a limited budget as well, so we don't have to go out and spend hundreds of dollars on self-care. A lot of things that you do can be done completely free. So today I am chatting with Cara Mendez. Cara Mendez is an intuitive business coach to homeschooling entrepreneurs and creator of Back to Center and the Chaos to Grace Revolution. She is a former perfectionist, self-care advocate, and certified pranic healer. Over the past decade, Cara experienced firsthand giving and doing from a place of depletion that ultimately resulted in adrenal fatigue. On her healing journey, she discovered a newfound self-worth through daily self-care practices that reconnected her with her true self. And since it is her passion to share the mindset and simplified life and business strategies it takes to cultivate a life of ease and grace. Recently, Cara had the honor to be part of the 2017 St. Louis Listen to Your Mother cast, where she shared her story of motherhood depletion and how it led her to a self-care lifestyle. She lives in the rural, picturesque town of Pacific, Missouri, with her amazing husband, 5 gorgeous kiddos, and 2 rescue dogs, where they homeschool and run multiple businesses. So without further ado, let's talk about self-care with Cara Mendez. Hi, Cara. Thank you for joining me on the podcast today. I am super excited to talk about this topic of self-care. So this is kind of a buzzword right now, self-care. No one really knows what it means. And no one really knows how important it is for people to do this. So I brought you on because you have a story about your health was suffering for a while. I'm not too sure how long. We'll talk about that. And you found that self-care really did help turn your health and wellness around. And I want people to know that this isn't something that is something that they shouldn't do for their families. They feel like they are sacrificing their families to do self-care, and it's exactly the opposite. So I brought you on. Thank you for coming on here. And if you want to just start a little bit about your story and who you are, that would be great.
Awesome. Thank you, Cheryl. I am so excited to be here and so honored that you invited me to do this with you because, yes, self-care is a huge part of my life now. It was not for over a decade, with having 5 children. And my husband and I have always run a business together. And then about 7 years ago, we began homeschooling. And everything that I was committed to had to do with my family, my house, and our business. And I always wanted to have my own business, but that was something that always had to kind of sit on the back burner, right? As do many of our hopes and dreams as moms. I think for me, my journey really revolved around like this level of perfectionism. So I wanted to be the best mom because actually I never actually wanted to be a mom, period. I didn't want that life. So whenever I was put in a position that like this was going to be my reality, I was like, okay, well then I'm going to be like the best at it and do it the best and give all of me. And I overgave too much of me, right? And of course, a lot of that was being modeled for me in my upbringing. And so I didn't know what self-care was. Like I was always into fitness for my whole entire life. I was athletic at a very high level. I played sports. And then after my softball career was over, then I, took up, like marathoning and running, and I did kickboxing for a while, and I did these kind of more extreme things. But then as a mother, I was like, oh my gosh, well, I can't do that anymore. Like, I don't have time to go to the gym every day, or I can't spend all that time doing that. And so with one child, I was able to kind of maintain the exercise component. But when I had my second son, I literally like gave up everything. I quit doing like all of my spiritual practices. I was, very into spirituality. I definitely never ran another 5K, 10K, half marathon again after that. I don't think I did. Maybe I did one more. That wasn't until later, but, and so things came to a head about 2 years ago. I had definitely been, as you said, suffering for many, many years, and totally unknowingly that there was something I could have done about it, as simple as taking time for myself every day. So it came to the point where I actually had pretty severe adrenal fatigue. I was working with a traditional Chinese medicine doctor who helped diagnose me with that. And I literally basically deconstructed my whole life, including what I would call like my mindset around like how I was living. And I rebuilt everything from a new point of view, from a different perspective. And I was able to restore my health, restore my well-being. And I would say in my energy levels, because if you know anything about adrenal fatigue, I'm sure many of your listeners have a better understanding of this, but it was like, I was exhausted, like completely exhausted. I could barely function to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I was just like basically like living off of like 3 cups of coffee just to like get me to that point. And I couldn't, and I wasn't sleeping well. And, again, I was having back-to-back children and homeschooling and running a business. And it was bad. It was really bad. I was just constantly stressed out. I was constantly like, if you've ever been a server, they say like you're in the weeds, like when you're behind on your tables and stuff. I just felt like my life was constantly in the weeds. I just couldn't keep up, and I constantly felt like a failure. And it was a really, really terrible, terrible way to live. Yeah. My marriage was in the toilet. Like, we were not happy. We fought all the time. I felt like my kids were like literally torturing me in my life, like, why are you doing this to me?
Yeah. And this is a common story. I know that there's people out there right now that are like, yeah, this is my life right now. And I know this because I take care of moms who this is their life or very close to it. They might not have 5 kids, they might have 3 kids, or, and I can say that I have 4 kids myself, and I used to be into athletics when I was younger. And I got that back more recently, and it's part of, that drives me. And people think that it would actually cause more fatigue, but for me, it lifts me up and gives me more energy. So anyway, I know people can really relate to the story, and adrenal fatigue and thyroid issues and just moms crashing is probably epidemic right now. People are on depression medication, anxiety medication. all these things just to try to get out of the weeds, like you said. So,
Yeah.
so what did you change? What was, what was the thing that made you say, I need to make a change? And what was that change?
Okay, so the list of things that changed is actually extremely long, and so I feel like if I listed that out, it might almost sound more overwhelming to already overwhelmed women. Um, but what I want to say is that this was like a journey, right? Like this was a process that I just kind of literally, I took one new habit at a time. Right. So, of course, at the time, I was putting still probably a little too much pressure on myself to change all the things at the same time, which that does not work. And so, looking back, there were probably some things where I have a journal, right? So, what I did was I started keeping a journal. And it was something I've always wanted to do, but I could never be consistent with it. So I would say I started consistently keeping a journal because the consistency here is like key, key, key. And obviously I was so miserable. Like I was so miserable. And I was like, hell no, this is not going to be my life anymore. Like I refuse to continue to live like this. And so I was seeing my doctor, and she got me on like I was still nursing, so I couldn't take all the herbal supplements that you might take for supporting your adrenals. So instead, she put me on a homeopathic. It was called BioAge Reverse. You might be familiar with that, but that I still take that actually 2 years later. I still take that, and it's just like 5 drops under the tongue a couple times a day. So that really helped kind of get my energy levels and it started helping naturally balance my hormones, right? Because adrenal fatigue is like a massive hormone imbalance, essentially.
Yeah.
Caused from chronic stress, poor diet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So I did that. And for me, it was really more of like an emotional and mental journey. I think I had to stop looking at everything that my kids did as like it was the worst thing in the world. Like, right, because you see my post on Facebook, so like my kids make like crazy, ridiculous messes like every day. When you have 5 kids, there's like no stopping that.
All kids make crazy, ridiculous messes all day.
Yeah, true. I can speak for my children. I can't speak for everyone else's. I know that there was a time like when I had my like 1 or 2 kids, I would have thought that like if I would have saw the posts that I make now, I would have thought like I was a terrible, horrible mother. Yeah. Like, oh my gosh, that woman needs to like get it together because she's like failing as a mom, like straight up. But now I'm like, okay, yeah. So my toddler is like just wants to pour his own milk, and every time he does that, he pours like half a gallon of milk on the floor. This happens like every day. Like over the weekend, like my toddler put keys in the electrical outlet, and he did get a little shocked. He was okay. But I was just like, how is this even my life? Like, how is this even happening? I was like right around the corner doing the dishes. He's over there sticking keys in the electric outlet. Oh my goodness. So, and there's so many other, like so many things, right? But those kinds of things, like I would have had like a total massive stress response to because of the way that I thought about it in my mind, right? So I don't know if this is really what you were expecting to hear from me, because most people want to know like, oh, what are the things that I can do? I want to know all the do things, right? And that list is really long, like really, really long. There's no way one person looking at that list would be like, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Crazy.
This is great because I'm very similar. It's not about the do list. It's more about the don't list and the changing of your mental.
Yeah. It's more about the being, right? Yes. Like it's who am I being?
Yeah.
So I had to really like change that, like the way that I looked at everything, like my perspective, my beliefs. So I would do affirmations like, I am, calm, present, balanced, centered. I would say those things to myself all the time. I took up a yoga practice because what better way to get calm and centered and balanced than to do yoga. And I did not have a lot of time, right? I was co-sleeping, nursing, homeschooling, business, all of those things were still happening. Like that stuff didn't stop. So, and I like to, make healthy food for my family and things like that. So I had to, I just had to figure out a way to do it in a more simplified and efficient way. And also in a way that reduced my amounts of stress significantly. So I did pare back a lot. So I simplified my life a lot. I just started saying no to things, like you said, the don't list, right? I did start saying no to things. I think our kids might have we even probably took a break from like activities. So journaling, I did the affirmation. So here was the thing that got me onto the journaling. My sister said, well, what if you just did it for 5 minutes a day? She's always been an avid journaler, right? And it was something that in my mind was going to take like a half an hour. And I was like, I don't have time for that. Again, that was like a mindset thing, right? Like, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
She's
a lot
like,
of people think they don't have time for a lot of this stuff. They think they don't have time for self-care. That's the big issue.
Right. And that is just a false story that we tell ourselves. And I'll be really honest. So what I really feel like that ultimately comes down to is not believing that we're deserving and worthy of that time for ourselves. So hence, this is where the affirmations and the journaling came in for me. Was I really had to dig in and cultivate that deeper level of self-worth, deserving, self-love, so that I could then actually take the actions of doing the things, right? So this was like a way of being again. I had to decide that I was worthy, and I had to change my mindset around yeah, you are worthy of feeling good, of taking a breather and a break or a nap. Hello. Do you know how many years I went my husband would take a nap and I would become irate at him because I would be like, how can you take a nap when all of that stuff needs to be done? Like, how dare you? I wish I could take a nap. I don't get to take a nap. If I don't get to take a nap, you damn sure don't get to take a nap. So I still kind of struggle with taking naps, but what I've learned to do is I will do yoga nidras, which you can find for free on YouTube, like 15 or 20 minutes. And they kind of take you through and you scan your body essentially. And so it's like you're awake, but you're kind of asleep. So it's like a half and half kind of a thing, but it's very restorative and it's very restful. And if you did a full, I think a full hour long one, I think it's the equivalent of getting 2 hours of sleep or something. I think it's the statistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would do those as little quick pick-me-ups, especially around that 3 p.m. dip, where your adrenals are actually resetting for the day. And so to help kind of rejuvenate that, I did that. I did those every day for I don't know how long. So again, it was these were some of the things that I did, but I had to look at the big picture of, okay, if I don't do these, then I'm just going to continue to have zero energy, not be as productive. And I really value productivity. I value it maybe a little too much, at least at that point in time. And I also had to remind myself, and I realized, wow, my self-worth is not based on my productivity. That was a big one.
Yeah, that's huge, isn't it? It's huge in our culture.
Yes. Yeah. It's not about how much I get done that day. That's not what determines my worth.
Yeah. Productivity and independency. I think those are two things that really stop people.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head, because support, I had to start allowing and receiving support.
Yes.
And yes, that was very hard to do for someone who really took pride in I can do it all and I can do it all by myself and I don't need your effing help. You know what I'm saying? I got this.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, the world is so much better when you allow and receive support. It really is. So here's the biggest takeaway I feel like that I had when all of these things kind of culminated together. I, first of all, I actually, the more time I took to slow down and do something for me, the more productive I was.
Yeah.
The more I could actually get done. Like
Yes.
that blew my mind. I was like, how is this even possible? Like,
Yeah.
you mean if I don't push myself like beyond my body's limits, then I can actually do more,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So I also had to really like acknowledge that I was pushing myself beyond my limits and start to learn to honor and really tune into my body more.
Yeah. I see
Yeah.
this. I see this a lot, and so this is exactly why I wanted to bring you on, because I want other moms to hear it, not just from me, but from
Yeah.
other people who've been there and done that, and have 5 kids and are homeschooling and have a business and all these things that you're doing, and the value now of self care and how it helps not only you and your health, which is essential, and if that was all, it would definitely be worth it, but also your family, your husband, the people around you, it helps them as well.
Yes, it does. Because, and I'll paint the picture of how that has really shifted. Oh, that gave me the chills, because that's probably not that my own pleasure and newfound, vibrancy wasn't enough. But what I also saw happen is that self care is essentially an act of self compassion. And if I can show my self compassion first, then I can much more easily show it to others, my children, my husband,
Yeah.
everyone in my life, essentially. Right? Because the way that we are to ourselves is how we are to others. Whether we want to admit or can see that, it is. That's just how human psychology works. So I'm much more dialed into my kids. And even though I'm not perfect, right? I still resort to, some old ways of being, and I still yell at my kids. But I don't, the thoughts that go through my head, I might still be like, what the, like if whenever I see like a crazy, ridiculous mess, but I can like pause and take a breath, and then I can like maybe go to another place with it. Like my cousin and I always kind of tease each other about this now. He'll be like, "Oh my God, Mario, you just did that mess or whatever." And I'll be like, "He's just learning. He's just exploring." And then whenever I do it, he'll be like, "Yeah, remember? He's just learning. He's just exploring." And I'm like, "I know. I just don't want to clean it up."
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't like trigger that cortisol response in my body before, whereas the thoughts that I would have before, I was also very much in a victimhood place, right? Like when you think that they're like doing something to you, like, oh, you're like ruining my life by doing that mess. I'm the victim here,
Yeah.
and that really triggers a cortisol response, which obviously those chronic cortisol responses is what fatigues the adrenals.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of the
So
people are in that chronic cortisol response. It's all over. I mean, people are doing this all the
yes.
time, whether they have 1 kid or 5 kids, or even no kids. So
Yes. And so then what happens is then, yes, you do become anxiety ridden. You become irritable. You're probably too hopped up on caffeine. So that was another thing that I did is I removed caffeine from my life. So I didn't do it like cold turkeys because I didn't want to do the headaches and all of that. But I went from having like 3 cups of coffee a day. I think I went down to like 1. And then I went and switched over to green tea, and I played with green tea, and I played with some matcha tea. And now I don't even do that. Occasionally I might do like have a Starbucks matcha latte or something, or I might have a glass of green tea. I'm not saying like I never have a nibble of caffeine, but it's very, very rare. And now I just mostly do like a Rubio's tea.
yeah.
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 I fortunately never got onto the caffeine habit. I never did like coffee, so that was great for me. But I know people who, like I said, live on caffeine just to get through the day, not because they even like coffee, but because they have to use it. It's their drug to get through the day.
Yeah. Well, and I think that coffee has been very glamorized, with the Starbucks and all the funny shirts, but first coffee and, all these different like little things, and people like love their coffee. Right. And that's fine. If your body does good with coffee, then more power to you.
Yeah.
It didn't do well with me.
And I live in the Pacific Northwest, the home of Starbucks itself. So, I mean, here coffee shops are everywhere around the corner. So a lot of people do drink coffee. I'm just not one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. And so, but that really helped me. And I was like, oh, wow, I feel like actually more energized. And like,
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I couldn't, it was like, oh, I can get up and get out of bed and get moving with no problem without caffeine in my life. Yeah. So that was very empowering, actually. It was very empowering to like not be dependent on like a substance, essentially. Yes. So, okay. So I would say, so I had like my three core self-care practices are my journaling, yoga. And then I also, of course, everyone probably assumes that this was coming, but I started a meditation practice. And again, meditation calms the central nervous system, right? And the more calm the central nervous system is, the less stressed the body is, the less cortisol that's being pumped out, right? So, and then this like whole other thing happened that I could have never really predicted, but it ended up creating what I would say is a second spiritual awakening, because I had experienced one shortly after my first son was born. And so I would say it was probably a second spiritual awakening where I was just like so in tune with myself. It really opened up my intuition. I know we're getting a little woo-woo here, but like, I felt like I could trust myself more with making decisions and knowing what I needed, what my family needed. And it was a really, really awesome experience. I never have felt more centered, more grounded, more balanced ever in my life.
So I have a question for you about your meditation, because a lot of people say,
Yeah.
I can't meditate. I try to sit there for 5 minutes and my monkey brain's just going crazy. Blah, 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 blah. I can't and they give up after like 2 minutes, 5 minutes. What was your process with getting into meditation? How long did it take for you to actually feel that you actually got the calming from it?
Okay. So I would say, first of all, it's totally fine if your monkey brain is going like crazy. That's totally normal and totally fine. Yep. And guess what? 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, that's fine. Start there. That's perfectly fine. You do not have to start with a 30-minute meditation practice at all whatsoever. So what I like to do whenever, and still sometimes maybe if I have been a little inconsistent with my meditation and my mind's going a little wild, I will just pop on a guided meditation. There's so many apps. I never really got into the apps, but who I like is, I'll have to send you the link to her. It's Boho Beautiful. And I also do a lot of her yoga videos too. Mm-hmm. She has yoga and Pilates videos. Boho Beautiful, and she has guided meditations that are really beautiful. And she usually oftentimes will incorporate a mantra into them. So it helps with that monkey brain because it really gives it something to focus on, but it's also very relaxing at the same time. And now after I've, been doing this really consistently, again, consistently, right? So consistency is a way of being.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to be in self-integrity in order to be consistent.
Yeah. And that's hard when people are trying to make the switch. The consistency is probably the hardest part, I think, at the beginning.
Yep. I did a lot of research and around habits, because that's essentially what you're doing. You're cultivating new habits.
Yeah.
Yeah. And cultivating one small habit at a time. I cultivated several new habits at a time because I made them into like a practice. and like, it was like, they were all grouped together, but there was 3 different things happening. So like movement, meditation, and journaling were happening every day in the morning. I, I like to get up as early as I can. At the time though, I needed sleep. My body needed sleep more than anything to repair and continue to heal my body.
Mm-hmm.
And I was still nursing and getting woken up several times a night. So and even still, I'm really gentle with myself. But if I can get up at like, sometimes I can get up now at like 5 or 5:30, more averagely like 6. But if I need to sleep in, I let my body do that. And my kids are old enough now that I can say, you get like, I'll have my oldest boy, who's almost 12, like watch the littler ones while I lock myself in my bedroom, and I'll do my thing.
Yeah.
So you have permission, not that you needed it, but you have permission to, allow that to look however it needs to look for you, is what I would say to any other mom watching this. I know, like, it does feel really good to have that like total peaceful time in the morning where you have like an hour to yourself and you just do you. But I know that also requires a mindset shift, right? That's not going to happen overnight. So I actually had like accountability buddies where we would like text each other when we woke up in the morning, people who were like, like fellow moms who were also wanting to get up early. I was real serious about it. I was really serious about all of this. Like, I did not want my life to ever like feel like that again. So that's another big piece of self-care and worthiness and all of these things. Is like, there's going to be times where you're just going to be like, oh, forget it. I don't even care. I don't want to do it. I don't want to get up. It's too much stuff, and you have to connect to your why. And you have to know why it's deeply, deeply important to you. And it's not the surface level why, it's like the deep why.
Yeah.
So you almost have to answer the question, why is this important to me? Repeatedly.
Yeah. Why
repeatedly until like.
So why is important is very, very telling. And then also, if you really don't want to do it, why not? What's holding you back? Why don't you feel maybe that you aren't worthy enough for it? So it can get kind of deep there.
It gets really deep. And those are great journaling questions that you just asked. And those are questions I would ask in my journal all the time. As I was going through this process, I would say, why am I not getting up on time? Why am I not doing this? Why am I eating these bad things, right? Because also one of the things with adrenal fatigue is a lot of times you want to try to remove, like you want to kind of shift to more of like the Whole30 paleo. Is it paleo or paleo? I always say wrong.
Yeah, paleo.
Yeah, so I eat paleo now, but it took me almost 2 years to get to the point where I could actually like be the person who would eat like that, right? So like I ate some carbs over Thanksgiving and I was like, oh, why did I do that? I'm so tired. I'm like, oh, this is why I don't eat them, because it makes me feel like crap. So, and I am all about feeling good. And like, you get to these new levels of feeling good, right?
Yeah.
And then you like, don't ever want to go below that again. So that's been my experience. But again, it's been a journey. I wanted to eat healthier back then 2 years ago, but I could not will myself to do it.
No.
And my why wasn't strong enough.
It's a lot to add to dietary changes. So whenever I do dietary changes with people, I try to do one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Just change one thing at a time. And if you're going from eating a high carb diet to complete paleo, there's a learning curve there too. And if you try to do it all at once, it's going to be overwhelming. Then you go back to, this is too hard. I can't do this. And then you just drop it and do it again.
And that's exactly what happened to me for a long period of time. And so this time around, I just kind of did it. I wouldn't say I'm like hardcore, but so it felt more doable for me. Like I did it at like the pace and rate at which I could do for right now. And then as I go along, I probably will choose to go deeper in it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, you're right. Totally just start with the one, like removing like one food. Yeah.
And we talked about a lot today,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of things that you can change. The big thing I think that people need to start with is changing their mindset on their knowing their why,
Mhm.
and figuring out why they aren't supporting their own body and health and self enough, and
Yeah.
make one small change. And I think journaling is a great way to start, because you can go through all those questions and start mashing that out first. And then those other habits become easier, not always easy, but easier to integrate into your life.
Yes, that's so true. And one of the other things along with that, in regards to the journaling component, is I I even used to ask myself, what are going like how is this going to feel, and how is this going to be for me once I'm living this, like once this is my reality, right? So you like literally like step into the, if I was already doing this now, like what would the benefits be, right? Like
Yeah.
who would I be, what would I be doing, how would I feel? And so you actually like take on that version of yourself now.
Yeah.
And then it allows you to so much more easily begin to start acting as that person and being that person from the emotional mindset component. That is probably the most powerful exercise. I didn't realize that I was kind of doing that back then. I was like listening to like all these videos and reading all these books and just trying to really like learn as much as I could about how to like do better and be better and feel better and all of that, right? Because I was like, I don't want to ever go back to that. So now I actually have like a daily practice that I implement, and I use this for all my goals, but you can most certainly use it for your self-care goals.
And
Yeah.
I love that,
And
because it's moving you towards an empowering way of doing things, and away from the fear of like, can I do this? Why can't I? Why do I want to do this? Why can't I do it? Like, and that's a big thing. My podcast is called Fearless Family Health. We want to move people away from a way of fear. You're not doing this because you're scared of not making the change.
yeah,
You are empowered to make the change. It's a slight difference,
it is.
but it's a powerful difference.
It is. And you're 100% right with that. It's, well, I was actually, right before you shared that, I was actually going to share, I kind of have I don't know, you could call it a motto and a mantra, an affirmation or whatever, but these self-care is not a to do, it's a for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So you don't it's not like an extra thing that you put on your to-do list and you dread. It's like that thing that you put on your to-do list because it like energizes you. It lights you up. It makes you feel better. And you know that it's like constantly moving you towards the best version of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope women, moms, dads, men, I think also have a really hard time with self-care because of the
Yes.
productivity aspect driven society that we have. So this isn't just for moms. It's for
Nope.
everybody. Everybody needs this in their life, and they need to embrace it in their life. And I think everything that you shared is amazing, and I thank you for sharing them. Do you have any final thoughts towards this topic?
Well, I wanted to just add a little something on to the men because my husband also went through his own self-care journey.
Yeah.
And he went from, my husband, we have a seasonal business here in the Midwest where we are. And in the winters, it was always kind of like gloom, doom, and dread. And it's like, there's not a lot of sun and it gets really cold. And my husband's Mexican. So he comes from, and he grew up in San Diego, California, where it's like warm all the time. And so moving here to the St. Louis area was really hard for him for many, many years. I mean, he's been here for 20 years, but it took him up until just a couple of years ago. We kind of went through this journey right around the same time, but he didn't want to be depressed in the winters anymore. So he started going to the gym, and then he started cleaning up his diet. Right. And so, the shift that was made for both of us was tremendous. He lost like 50 pounds. And now are where we are in our lives as human beings, like as partners, next level. Like from fighting all the time and being like, why aren't you doing this? And I hate you and you're annoying and, like that whole, it was just really unhealthy and did not feel good, to like the best place we've ever been in our lives. And I totally 1000% attribute that to that self-care journey that we both decided to embark on our own. And it wasn't like he pushed me to do it or I pushed him to do it. It was, intrinsically motivated for each of us, but it has made the biggest difference in our marriage, bar none. Our business has grown. Our marriage is amazing. I mean, I'm talking amazing, like really, really good. And, and then like, I just feel like the whole family unit is able to be more taken care of because of that. Because of we put us first, he gets up at like, he'll get up at like, he was getting up for like a year at like 4:30 in the morning and like going to the gym.
Yeah. I have to say too, with my self-care journey started more when I was, probably 4 or 5 years ago. And it did make a huge, huge change in our relationship too. And so it's more amazing than ever. We've been married for 18 years now, and it's better now than it ever has been. So, and he didn't change a whole lot. He does a lot of things already. He was ahead of me on that journey to a certain degree. He still works his butt off and could probably do more. But that's his journey, not my journey. But it does make a huge difference in our unit. And then that spreads out to the family and the children and everyone around us as well. So it's amazing. And I just sometimes just want to shake people and just like, just start somewhere.
I think the important thing is to ask questions to yourself. Like, if you don't like know what's really wrong with your life, but you just know that there's like something missing or it's not like you want it to be, you have to look at your external life and you say like, do I have everything that I want? Like, how are my relationships? How is my health and wellness? How is my bank account? Like all of those different things. And that will tell you like where the work is up here to do, and I think that, that asking yourself, like, what do I really want? If society and what all of the stories that I told myself, or maybe the stories that were passed down from previous generations, from my family or, generations before them, like if those were, not at play in my decision making, what would I really want to do? And you kind of start from there.
And that's a huge question because it can really topsy-turvy you right over into something that you're not even in alignment with in your life. So that's a whole, like, we could talk about that for 2, 3, 4 hours probably.
I know. But it's just add it to the journal, add it to your journaling question.
Yeah. There's so many questions. And that self-discovery can be a long, long journey for some people, depending on how ingrained they are into their ideas and paradigms that they have right now. But cool. Well, thank you very much for sharing with us. And I'm so happy that you found this for yourself and that your health is turned around. Your relationship is awesome and your kids are thriving because of all of that. And that's all just because you made a shift and said enough is enough and I'm worth it. And the self-care. And notice we didn't talk about you have to go get a massage or a pedicure, or go on like a vacation all by yourself. None of this costs really any money.
Right.
You can find these YouTube videos for free to do yoga on or meditation. Like this doesn't have to be all encompassing. It doesn't have to cost a dime. It doesn't have to take you that much time.
Yeah.
So
you can even just journal. You already have a cell phone. You can journal on your Google Docs app. That's what I do.
Okay. Notepad, whatever you want.
Yeah. However, I will say that some of those other things that you mentioned, I did end up taking a trip by myself this year. My husband and I have taken 2 trips by ourselves this year. Yeah. Total acts of self-care. But those were not, in the past, those were not always financially viable options for us. But again, I feel like the level of like deserving and worthiness, and you're like, hell yeah, I am deserving and worthy of this,
Yeah.
and so then those things may come, but yes, they're most certainly not required to get started.
They're not necessary. And I don't want people to hold them back and say, I can't afford to take care of myself because they think they need to do these things. And that's not,
Yep.
that's
No.
mostly starts between the ears in that little brain we have, and, getting that monkey brain to calm down a little bit too. So you work with moms, homeschooling moms, right? So
I work with homeschooling entrepreneurial moms.
Yes. So if there is a homeschooling entrepreneurial mom out there who wants to work with you on creating a life of, I don't even want to say balance. I don't like that word balance because it never really is.
Ease and grace. A life of ease and grace.
Yes. Then they can reach you at
www.caramendez.com.
Cool. And I will have that, of course, listed for people so they can read it and find you. And thank you so, so much. Anything you want to share before we say goodbye?
That's it. This was a blast. I love it. This is one of my most favorite topics to talk about. So super grateful to be here.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining us, and I'll talk to you later, Carol.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you for joining us on the Fearless Family Health Podcast. If you like what you hear and want to hear more, please subscribe to upcoming casts and rate us on iTunes. Also, don't forget to share it with your friends so we can all be fearless.